our next guest says the CIA torture techniques laid out in the Senate report were not meant to gain intelligence. He says they were meant to simply torture.
He says he knows that because they were used on him. Ryan Casey joins us now live from Seattle, Washington. He's a lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy Reserve, and I guess we could say a veteran of some of the worst treatment that humans can inflict on each other. Thanks so much for being with us. I'm sorry about the reason, but tell us, what did you endure?
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure for being here. The SEER school, SEER, which stands for Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape, was instituted in the 1950s following the Korean War, in which U.S. service personnel were tortured, used for propaganda, that sort of thing. And after the war was over, many of them refused repatriation. Some of them came back and found themselves charged with war crimes. It was born out of a realization that we needed to train our troops that might fall into enemy hands and be subject to torture and be able to resist interrogation, resist propaganda, and that sort of thing. So in a sense, the techniques that are used in the SEER program were reverse engineered from torture. And they're simply meant to expose U.S. military personnel at high risk of capture, aviators, special forces, people like that. And
I'm going to interrupt. What did they do to you? What did they actually do to you?
Well, there's any number of measures they use, from waterboarding down to being confined in small places, being very cold. Sleep deprivation, of course, is one, and other things. And truthfully, we're not supposed to go into depth on these. We signed an agreement not to. But the point is that these measures were never meant to, as a means to actually elicit reliable intelligence or information. They were meant to torture and to get you used to torture. Now, I will say there is a very big difference being tortured, as unpleasant as it is, and I assure you it was very unpleasant, when you know, at least somewhere in your mind, as groggy as you are from sleep deprivation and not eating and that sort of thing, you know it's training. A real POW or a real detainee doesn't know that it's training. He doesn't know if he or she will ever get out and ever see the light of day or see their family. So that's a big difference. But the point is, it was never meant for interrogation. It was meant for torture.
That's a very audacious claim that you make, you know, that the CIA enhanced interrogation techniques, the sole purpose of it was not to obtain or extract any kind of intelligence, but to purely torture, to flex American muscles, as you write in this Huffington Post article. I mean, do you truly believe that the CIA had no interest in obtaining any kind of intelligence from this?
No, that's actually not what I'm saying at all. I do think that they thought they could get whatever information they could get. My point is, they were going about it in completely the wrong way, in a way that was never designed to work in the first place. And the people doing it, as the Senate intelligence report has reported, these two guys had no training in actual interrogation, had no expertise in Al-Qaeda or counterterrorism or anything of the like. They were trained in torture for the SEER program, and so they were running this whole thing. It was outsourced completely to them, and they didn't even know what they were doing.
Well, you're making a point about people who aren't here to defend themselves, and I don't want to speak in their name. They haven't been identified by name in the report, but one of the two psychologists who, in fact, you're describing is named James Mitchell. He is responding. Like you, he signed an agreement not to reveal too much about what he did, but he said that nothing was done to those detainees that aren't done to our servicemen and women and by our own training programs. Essentially, he's saying that the worst of the torture outlined in the Senate report was, in fact, done to people like you. Do you think that's true, and is that a good defense?
Well, I think it's true to an extent, and it's very much not true to an extent. The U.S. military has invested a lot in Navy SEALs, in aviators like me. They're not going to go out there and kill people. We do know that some of these detainees, in fact, died in U.S. custody. So the limits, even if you're using supposedly the same technique, such as waterboarding, the limits that you go beyond may well be different. The other thing is just the mental aspect of knowing that it's training versus not knowing if you'll ever get out of there is very different. But absolutely, I think these measures were taken way beyond the way that they're taken in SEER school.